Hello, amazing artists. Today we are going to start an illuminated manuscript letter. So you will be doing one of the letters in your name. I'm choosing a D for the first letter of my last name, but I want you to include something personal. So it has to be part of your name. An illuminated manuscript is these really cool artworks that were generally made by the monks or nuns in the Middle Ages, and they were copying books before we had, the printing press and all that stuff. Everything in a book had to be hand copied. And the illumination part is the part where they added all the details and they kind of made like the first letter of that whole manuscript look really fancy. So for example, something like this, where it's just the first letter of the page, got real fancy and decorated, and then the rest of it was just the writing part. So what we're gonna do is kind of think about how we can make a cool design, and I'm leaving this really open-ended, but I want you to stay medieval, okay? So we're not using modern symbols or modern designs. I want you to use what you think might look cool, and for your name, but I also want you to think about, medieval designs instead of modern designs. So there's all sorts of cool things we could look at. I'll have all this stuff copied for you guys to look at as you guys are working, but basically we are working on tooling foil. So these are sharp, please be careful. This is just aluminum foil that's a little bit heavier, and we're gonna carve into it. You'll need a stencil. This is how they usually come, but yours might be separate. But I could either trace this or I could trace this. And either one of those is gonna let me start with the big fancy letter D. So you can decide if you really wanna do it just freehand, then you can, but I'm gonna do mine using the stencil first and then build and add and do lots of elaborate details. You'll notice that I have a blue, this is just a blank sketchbook. Please don't draw on these, but we can use these because we need something kind of like just a little bit of cushion or padding right under our workspace, because then we can carve into our design. So I'm just gonna take my little wooden stylus or pencil with no lead, and all I'm gonna do is start tracing my letter D. I'm gonna try and do this part fairly quickly. I can always come back and make it deeper and more elaborate, but I really want to kind of just finish with this letter in case somebody else needs to borrow it. I don't know how many other letter D's are in the class, so I'm just going to do that. And now you can kind of see I've got my D that's kind of carved in, and I'm already going to come back and just make sure that that's a little deeper. And all I'm going to do today is just start thinking about, okay, what kind of things could I add to my cool letter D? Maybe I want to do some symbols, or maybe I just want to make the whole, I might have a theme. I want it to be nature themed, or I want it to have like swords and knights and shields and all sorts of cool stuff. You can see it's pretty carved in, and on the back now it's pushing out. So what's cool about this tooling foil is that you can carve in, you can add details. Maybe I'm gonna do, I don't know, I'm trying to decide if I want to do an elaborate border or a simple border. So whatever you're doing, you're just kind of going to start doing a little sketch in. Maybe I'm going to start doing some details. Okay. So whatever it is you're doing, you're just kind of starting with designs. You can poke holes. So those little dots, those always look pretty cool. Okay, you can do swirls. The trickiest part about this is it's pretty hard to erase. So you're gonna have to kind of be a little bit loose. If you make a line you don't like, the best thing is just to turn it into something. If you absolutely hate it, you can kind of push on it right onto the to the table, and it kind of erases it, but you'll just have to do your best. So we're starting with our letter, we're adding designs, we're just starting to carve in. You can decide if you want a theme, if you want to include any little characters or animals. These are mostly things like from a family crest situation. So maybe you know that about your family, or you think, oh, if I did have a family crest, I would have this. So we're just adding with mostly the stylus today and the carving tool. If maybe you have gotten far enough and you say, okay, I've done enough with my details. Obviously mine is barely even started, so I wouldn't move on yet. Our next step is we are gonna add Sharpie on top. So the cool thing about Sharpie is that the Sharpie actually ends up being very reflective and beautifully colored on this surface. Okay, so you can see it's still shiny too, and it's a nice bright color. So we will end up with a Sharpie too. If by chance you get this part kind of finished, you like it how it is, you can move on to the Sharpie today, and I'll be back next time and we'll be able to keep going. Okay, have fun.